I will never forget the look on Brandon's face when the waiter placed the small folded note in front of him. His face drained of color like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on him in the middle of a winter night. If the Oscars had a category for best performance by a cheating husband caught red-handed, he would have swept it. Panic, guilt, and pitiful fear all playing across his face at once. "Enjoy your dinner. Hope it tastes as good as the lie you told me this morning." Just 15 words. But they were enough to smash the sweet little illusion Brandon had carefully constructed for years. And enough to mark the end. Not loud, not dramatic. Of a marriage I once thought was unbreakable. Let me back up for a second. I'm Chloe, 34 years old, CEO of an interior design company in San Diego. And until just a few hours before that moment, I still believed my husband was a trustworthy man. 11 years of marriage, a cozy home in La Jolla, 2 rescue dogs named Milo and Peanut, and quiet evenings spent curled up after work. We were often called the perfect couple. I even took pride in that. Until that afternoon when I ran into Serena, an old friend from college, at the flower shop. "Chloe?" She touched my arm. "You haven't changed a bit. But are you okay?" I nodded, confused as she hesitated. Maybe I was mistaken. But this morning, I saw Brandon at Costa Lucia, booking a dinner reservation for 2. Probably nothing, just, he looked pretty close with a brunette in a short blue dress. I felt a chill race down my spine. "Are you sure it was Brandon?" Serena looked at me, sympathy filling her eyes. I was just a few steps away from their table. It was him. I didn't want to be the one to say it, but if it were me, I'd want to know. I thanked her and walked back to my car, too distracted to even realize how long I'd sat there, foot pressed on the brake. Part of me wanted to dismiss everything. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a colleague, but deep down, I knew better. Brandon hated Italian food. Yet he'd booked a table at Costa Lucia, one of the most romantic Italian restaurants by the ocean, known for its candlelight and 2-seat arrangements designed for whispered conversations. I called the restaurant using the sweetest tone I could muster, as if I were a loving wife planning a surprise. "Good afternoon, I'd like to confirm a reservation under Brandon King for tonight at 8 p.m. "Yes, ma'am. Table for 2, ocean view, with red wine as requested." I don't remember how I hung up the call. I remained in front of the mirror for a long time afterward, staring at the half-done makeup on my face, trying to glue back the shards of something shattered inside my chest. No tears. Just a solid layer of cold settling around me like armor. I chose a simple black dress, something Brandon had never seen me in, and did my makeup perfectly as if I were going to a gala, not a confrontation. I arrived at the restaurant at 7:45 p.m. and requested a table with a view of the dining area, but partially obscured by a decorative column. The waiter smiled politely and led me to a seat that felt all too familiar with scenes like this. 8:02 p.m. Brandon walked in. White dress shirt, navy blazer, and the smile I once believed was reserved only for me. Now it belonged to the woman beside him, younger, short dress, red lipstick, and eyes that flirted without shame. Brandon's hand rested lightly on her lower back, just like he used to do with me in our early days. I didn't recognize her, but they clearly knew each other well. I flagged the waiter. "See the man in the blue blazer at that table in the corner?" He followed my gaze and acknowledged with a subtle dip of his head. "I'd like to send him a note, just him. And, if possible, I'd like to watch his reaction." The waiter hesitated briefly, then dipped his head slightly, like someone who had done this before. I took out a small piece of paper from my purse, wrote the 15 words, folded it neatly, and slipped in a $20 bill. I sat up straight, hands resting on my wine glass, and waited. I raised my glass just in time to see the waiter make his approach, his steps calm, measured, like he was simply delivering dessert. Brandon was still smiling, his eyes sparkling as if nothing outside that table mattered. The waiter gently leaned down and placed the folded note beside Brandon's plate. "Someone sent this for you, sir." I didn't blink. I wanted to memorize every expression on the face of the man who once kissed my forehead every morning, held me close each night, and promised things that had clearly turned to ash. Brandon looked at the folded note, confused. His fingers slowly unfolded it. 1 second. 2. Then 3. His whole body stiffened like it had hit ice. The wine glass in his hand fell onto the salad plate, splashing red onto his blazer. The woman across from him widened her eyes, concerned. "Brandon, what's wrong?" But he didn't hear her. His body entered full panic mode. His hands trembled, his eyes darted around like prey caught in open field, and then they landed on me. We were nearly 60 feet apart, but in that instant I could hear my own heartbeat, steady, unshaken, and no longer beating for him. Brandon's eyes widened in disbelief, his mouth opened as if to speak, but nothing came out. I held his gaze, unflinching, no smile, no nod. I raised my glass again, a cold, deliberate toast. The other woman turned to follow his gaze. She didn't recognize me, of course. With men like Brandon, wives are the footnotes. Quiet, unseen, edited out of the story he tells to new lovers. I knew the script too well. I placed the glass down and stood. The chair made no sound. I walked past the rows of tables without looking back, without hesitation. Each step felt like closing a chapter written far too long. As soon as my hand touched the door, I heard a chair scrape loudly behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know it was Brandon. "Chloe." My name rang out in the quiet space, drawing a few heads. I didn't stop. I wasn't about to give him a chance to turn this into a tearful scene. The glass door clicked shut behind me like a period that couldn't be undone. The night breeze from San Diego Bay brushed across my face, sharp and clean. A drop of moisture landed on my lips. I wasn't sure if it was a tear or mist, but I didn't wipe it away. I remained still, drew in a steady breath, and felt, perhaps for the first in a long time, that I was the one shaping this story. Brandon didn't come home that night. I sat alone in the living room, the dim light casting long shadows on the white walls. The house felt foreign, as if even the walls were questioning everything I had once believed. Close to 2 a.m., my phone lit up. A text popped up. "Chloe, please let me explain. I'm sorry, this isn't what you think." I read it over and over, as if staring at a blurry replica of the man who used to be my husband. Not what I think? I thought he loved me. I thought he was honest. I thought he was the kind of man who wouldn't betray me, even if given the chance. I placed the phone on the table. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop. Not to search what to do when your husband cheats. I already knew what I needed to do. Around 3 a.m., the texts started pouring in. My phone buzzed nonstop. Every single message from Brandon. The same empty words on repeat, like if he said them enough times, the lie might become truth. "Chloe, I'm begging you, don't shut me out. It was just a mistake. I don't want to lose you. You're the only one, I swear." I chose silence, not as part of a game, but because there was nothing left to say. But because I saw no reason to answer messages typed by hands that had already touched someone else. While my heart was still stuck at the morning he said he had an early meeting. Close to 6 a.m., I dozed off on the sofa, a thin blanket draped over my legs. I woke up to the sound of the front door opening, faint daylight slipping through the curtains. Brandon walked in, looking like he hadn't slept all night. His shirt was wrinkled, hair messy, eyes bloodshot. He visibly tensed when he saw me sitting, upright, calm, composed. Something about it made him shift uneasily. "Chloe?" His voice was hoarse. "I know. I owe you an explanation." I looked at him. I didn't ask a single question. He had to be the one to drag the truth out into the light. Brandon sat down, keeping a cautious distance. "What happened? With her? It wasn't something I planned, it just happened." I let out a short, sharp laugh, the kind that cuts like a blade. "Just happened. Must take in 6 months for that accident to occur regularly every week, huh?" He lowered his head, a long pause. "Yes. 6 months." He exhaled, like releasing a weight he'd been carrying. 6 months, I repeated, my voice quiet but firm. "While I was planning our 10-year anniversary, you were busy buying her perfume?" "Chloe, while I was booking our trip to Oregon, you were booking hotel rooms for a third person?" I clenched my fists, trying to keep myself from breaking apart. You don't understand, Brandon snapped back, eyes flashing. You're always busy. Work, meetings, contracts. I felt left out, like I didn't matter anymore. I pushed back my chair, my emotions snapped like a violin string stretched too tight. Don't you dare blame this on me. I stepped closer, pointing directly at him. Who stayed behind to keep the house in order while I built the business and still made it home for dinner? Who remembered your mom's birthday, planned Christmas for both families, while working until 10 every night? Brandon looked up, his face flushed. I'm not saying you didn't try, but I felt lost, Chloe. You changed. Cold. Distant. You weren't the girl who used to curl up and watch movies with me all night. I bit my lip, not because what he said was wrong, but because it was only half the truth. The half he twisted to justify something unforgivable. Yes, I changed. I became more independent, stronger. But change isn't betrayal. I didn't turn to someone else when you were stressed and jobless for a year. I didn't walk away when you nearly lost everything from a failed investment. I stayed. I chose to stand by you. My voice dropped. And you chose to betray me. Brandon didn't argue. He simply covered his face with his hands, and in that moment I didn't see the man who had once proposed to me in Central Park. I saw a stranger. One who couldn't even look at the consequences of his own decisions. The room fell into silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The kind that opens a void between two people who once called each other family. I turned and walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. Starting today you sleep in the guest room, I said without turning around. We're done pretending like anything here is normal. From that day on, I didn't cry anymore. Not because the pain disappeared, but because I realized I didn't have time for weakness. When trust is shattered, all you have left is clarity, and I held on to it like armor. Brandon began avoiding my eyes. We lived under the same roof, but like strangers. He started waking up earlier, leaving the house before sunrise, coming back late. No more apologies. No more staged hugs that smelled like new cologne, just silence. The kind that lingers like smoke. That's when I started gathering evidence. Not because I needed more proof of the affair, but because a deeper, darker instinct had started whispering in my ear, something wasn't just wrong, something was off. I reopened our joint bank statements. Over the past 3 months I found a string of suspicious charges. A hotel in Palm Springs, 2 luxury jewelry purchases from Cartier, and a plane ticket booked for 2. The other name listed? Madeline Foster. Not a friend, not a colleague I'd ever heard of. And certainly not just an accident. I found a receipt from a luxury boutique in Los Angeles, over $3,000 for an evening gown, designer clutch, and high heels. Paid with the supplementary card. The one I thought was only for business use. I took pictures of everything, carefully documented each line, sent them to a private email address I had just created, secured with 2-factor authentication, known only to me. Every night, Brandon slept soundly as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I quietly slipped into his home office, the same place he used for late-night online meetings with clients. His computer wasn't locked, and knowing his usual password, his late father's birth date, gave me easy access. And there I found the first piece that left me stunned. In a folder named Sapphire, I saw a detailed plan outlining Brandon's involvement in acquiring a fintech startup in Austin called Fenora Labs. What caught my attention wasn't his participation. It was the attached files. Internal documents detailing shareholder structure, operational strategy, and IPO timeline. Confidential materials that only Fenora executives should have access to. I stared at the sender's name. Madeline Foster. The same woman listed on the flight booking. Her email signature read, Chief Strategy Officer, Fenora Labs. I swallowed hard. Every piece was falling into place, leading to something I hadn't imagined. Brandon wasn't just cheating on me, he was exploiting a personal relationship to extract insider information from a direct competitor. An act that could constitute securities fraud and a serious breach of financial ethics. I kept digging. On his hard drive, I discovered a hidden folder containing audio files of Zoom meetings between Brandon and 3 other men. One of them was the CEO of a venture capital firm planning to back the acquisition. I listened to a nearly 40-minute recording. Brandon's voice was unmistakable. Madeline will send the next batch of documents next week. I've ensured all risks are cleared. The internal probe at Fenora got shut down. They have no idea she's our inside source. I stopped the recording there. My stomach twisted into knots. There was no doubt now. Brandon was in deep. Not just a deceitful husband, but someone whose actions could trigger a massive financial collapse, if exposed. I copied all the files onto a USB drive and hid it behind a framed picture in my own office. Then I called Emily Tan, a financial attorney I went to college with, now a senior partner at a law firm specializing in shareholder disputes and white-collar fraud. We met Friday morning at a small cafe in Del Mar. "I'm not sure I want to take action," I said plainly as I handed her the USB. "I just need to know what I'm up against." Emily plugged it in and browsed through the folders. Her expression slowly changed. "If this is legit, Chloe, this isn't just personal, this is federal." I hesitated. My chest felt like it was caught in a windstorm. But I didn't flinch. 2 days after the meeting with Emily, I sent an anonymous message to Madeline Foster's work email, along with 3 attachments: a hotel booking receipt, a screenshot of an email bearing her signature, and a photo of Brandon holding her by the waist in the Rosewood Hotel lobby. No name, no threats, no demands. Just 4 words. "We need to talk." She replied the next morning, short and direct. "Who's sending these?" I followed up with the time and place: 6 p.m. today, Ilara Rooftop Restaurant, 27th floor. I arrived 20 minutes early. Madeline showed up at 6:12. Ivory business dress, sleek ponytail, composed demeanor. But her eyes scanned the room with visible caution. She spotted me and walked over. "Chloe King?" she asked, voice sharp. I met her gaze without offering a handshake. "Have a seat. I don't know what this is about, but following someone is a violation of privacy." I smiled. Not the friendly kind. "Madeline, I know exactly who crossed the line. And I didn't follow anyone. I just picked up the pieces my husband dropped along the way." She froze at the words "my husband." "Brandon told me you two were separated." I gave a slight nod. "He also once told me his sister was allergic to red wine. Turns out he just didn't want me bringing wine to her dinner party. Brandon says a lot of things. It doesn't mean they're true." Madeline tightened her grip on her glass. I didn't push. I simply reached into my purse and pulled out a stack of printed documents. High-resolution shots of emails and plans Brandon had saved. "You know exactly what these are, don't you?" She skimmed through them, then looked up, her face drained. "How did you get these?" "I didn't steal anything. I found it on the computer in my husband's home office. And from what I understand, it looks like you've sent him quite a bit of information that qualifies as internal data under Fenora's control." She said nothing. A long pause followed, broken only by the soft jazz playing in the background. Finally she spoke. "Brandon said everything was legal. He told me those documents were just preliminary market analysis, nothing internal." I held her gaze. "I believe you thought that. Just like I used to believe every time he came home late it was because of a deadline." Madeline gave a dry, tight-lipped smile. "Did you invite me here to threaten me? To report me to my company, to take me to court?" I shook my head. "I asked you here to give you a chance." She frowned. "A chance for what?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. "A chance to get out before you're dragged down with a man who's using you as a stepping stone for an illegal acquisition." "Brandon didn't just lie to me. He's lying to you too. Do you really think he loves you? Or does he love your access to confidential data more?" She didn't answer, but her hand on the table trembled slightly. I placed a business card in front of her. "I have a lawyer, I have evidence, I haven't gone public because I'm still waiting for the right moment. But I won't let someone like Brandon keep hurting people, not even you, whether you believe it or not." Madeline looked at me. Her gaze had shifted. No longer arrogant. Now she looked like someone realizing she'd taken a wrong turn. "I need to verify everything you're saying." "I encourage that," I replied. "And when you're ready, call me. Just don't wait until it's too late for both of us." I gave a slight tilt of my head. "I believe you thought that." That night she didn't call, but I knew she would. Because Brandon hadn't just betrayed me. He had picked the wrong woman to manipulate twice. The annual shareholder meeting of Riverton Asset Partners took place on a rainy Monday morning, on the 19th floor of the Union Plaza building in downtown San Diego. I walked into the lobby at 8:50 a.m. wearing a tailored black suit, my hair in a neat bun and holding a slim briefcase containing exactly what I knew would shake the room. The receptionist recognized me immediately. "Chloe King, haven't seen you here in a while." "I have an appointment to attend the strategic presentation this morning," I said calmly. "Yes. You're listed as an official shareholder through the internal trust fund Mr. Brandon King established. Right this way." Shareholder, a title he had long forgotten. The conference room was nearly full, major shareholders, in-house attorneys, investment advisors, and a few familiar faces from the early days, when Brandon and I were building the company together, before he decided I should step back and stay behind the scenes. Brandon stood at the head of the table, murmuring something to a man in a gray suit. When he turned and saw me, the smile on his face faltered, like it had been cut by a razor. "Chloe?" He walked quickly toward me. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for the meeting." "As a shareholder," I replied, clearly and firmly. "I want to hear my husband's presentation on acquiring Finora Labs." Brandon narrowed his eyes, visibly alert. Before he could speak, the chairman addressed the room. "Good. If no one else is running late, let's begin." Brandon was forced to return to the podium. He launched the presentation with his usual confidence, clicking through slides, his deep voice echoing. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Finora Labs acquisition represents a strategic opportunity with high return potential." He walked the room, through projections, ROI charts, and market trend graphs, like everything was under control. Some nodded. His persuasiveness still worked, but only on those who hadn't seen behind the curtain. When he finished, the chairman turned to me. "Mrs. King, as requested formally through your legal counsel, you've been granted time to speak. Please proceed." I stood. Slowly, calmly. I didn't look at Brandon. "Thank you. As co-founder of the King Family Trust and an internal shareholder of Riverton, I have a duty to present certain information that could impact the merger decision we're about to discuss." I plugged in my laptop to the central screen, every eye turned to me. Brandon shook his head slightly, his lips pressed tight. But it was too late. The first slide appeared, an internal email from Madeline Foster. Subject line, "Confidential internal documents, for Brandon King only." The conference room fell silent. Absolutely silent. This document, along with several others I'm about to present, proves that Mr. Brandon King exploited a personal relationship to gain unauthorized access to Finora Labs' internal data for his own benefit, while concealing that activity from the entire board of directors. I clicked to the next slide. Screenshots of recorded conversations, expense reports paid through a representative fund, and suspicious transaction histories linked to a Riverton-dependent credit card. Brandon shot up from his seat. "You're making this up. This is personal revenge because our marriage ended." "Oh? And this is personal too?" I replied, clicking again. To reveal hotel surveillance photos of Brandon meeting Madeline during a supposed solo work trip for Riverton. Or this? I tapped forward, a transcript of his messages with Madeline, requesting more seed round financials. The board chair cut in. "That's enough. This is a serious breach. All merger proceedings are suspended immediately." Another investment director spoke up. "I move to suspend Brandon King from all executive activities pending an independent internal investigation." Agreed. Seconded. In favor. Brandon glared at me. "You have no idea what you've just done, Chloe. You're going to regret this." I packed up my laptop, not even glancing back. "You're the one who doesn't realize what you've lost." I walked out to a flurry of whispers behind me. The door clicked shut, soft, clean, but final, like a verdict. Brandon had built a kingdom on lies. I simply turned on the lights and let everyone see. I filed for divorce on Wednesday morning, exactly 3 days after the board meeting. No warning, just left a copy of the papers in the kitchen, where I had made our final dinner together before everything fell apart. He stayed silent. Days crept past in the kind of quiet that says more than any apology could. Then, on a Monday evening while I was packing for my move to a new apartment, my phone rang. His name lit up on the screen. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. Chloe. His voice was hoarse. Can you hold off a bit? I'm losing everything. You don't need to make this public. I didn't answer right away. Then I said calmly and clearly. I'm not the one who made it public, I just brought the truth into the light. I'm not waiting anymore, Brandon, enough is enough. That weekend, Madeline submitted the full collaboration record to the SEC. I knew because she sent me a short message. I chose truth. Thank you for waking me up in time. 2 days later, my lawyer got a call from the Federal Investigation Office. They requested a copy of the USB and all documents I had collected. Soon after, a search warrant was issued for Brandon's private office. The press started catching wind as internal leaks from Riverton spread. Headlines followed. Finance CEO faces insider trading allegations. Benora takeover halted over personal misconduct claims. Brandon King from innovation icon to federal probe subject. I declined all interview requests. The evidence spoke for itself. Brandon was temporarily removed as CEO after an emergency board session. A senior executive stepped in as interim. Investors demanded a full investigation, and the Securities and Exchange Commission formally opened a case reviewing Brandon's financial activities from the past 3 years. I moved out of the La Jolla house by week 2 after filing for divorce. No emotional packing, I took only what was mine. No more, no less. Half the assets, clearly valuated. Brandon didn't challenge it. He knew that any pushback now would only damage his already fractured public image. On the day we signed the divorce papers, I wore a gray knit coat my mother had once made for me. Brandon sat across the table. Disheveled hair, dark circles, a wrinkled suit, and none of that smug confidence he used to wear so easily. He tried to speak. Chloe. If things hadn't gone this way, do you think maybe we could? I signed without looking up. This isn't about what you think, it's about what you did. The decree was stamped at 11:36 a.m. That night, I stood by the window of my new apartment, gazing out toward the dark ocean. The city still sparkled like always, but it felt like I had stepped into a new world. One without broken promises or sleepless doubt. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily, my attorney. SEC just issued a formal investigation order. If enough evidence holds, Brandon could face criminal charges. I exhaled deeply, like someone who had finally escaped a smoke-filled basement and could breathe again. I don't know how many chances Brandon still has to save himself. But I know this much. I saved myself. And I didn't need anyone beside me to do it. My marriage ended. But my life was just beginning. 6 months after the divorce, I moved into a small apartment on the 17th floor overlooking San Diego Bay. Every morning I brew coffee, open the balcony doors, and let the sea breeze roll in. No more rushed breakfasts, no more client calls echoing through the living room. Just seagulls, soft waves against the pier, and the quiet return of my own heartbeat. I didn't go back to the old firm. Instead, I began offering independent consultations to small businesses on financial ethics and internal controls. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't high profile, but it aligned with the values I almost lost in my former marriage: transparency, integrity, and knowing when to walk away. Next week, I'm speaking at my old university on redefining ethics in modern finance. I hesitated at first, but then I realized I've come far enough from the shadows to stand tall without needing anyone to hold me up. The afternoon before the event, I stood on the balcony, warm tea in hand, salt air on my skin. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Chloe, I just accepted a new job in Chicago. Thanks for helping me see myself clearly. I smiled softly. From my drawer, I took out a small box. Inside were the first business cards I had printed. Chloe King, Ethics and Financial Risk Advisor. I ran my fingers across the lettering. No Brandon's last name, no echoes of a betrayed wife, just me, a woman who chose to rise, walk away, and begin again. All it took was truth. And one steady step forward. Chloe's story is a powerful reminder that betrayal doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of rebirth. When everything fell apart, she didn't seek revenge through chaos. She quietly gathered the truth, protected herself, and shielded others who were unknowingly caught in someone else's wrongdoing. In a world full of empty promises, Clarity and self-respect are the compass that leads us back to ourselves. Strong, independent, and no longer willing to compromise with pain. What do you think about Chloe's choices and the journey she went through? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and powerful stories about life, love, and family in the episodes to come.